offensive play, the first few possessions of the game? What did you see out there? What went right, what went wrong?
Well, what'd you think? I mean, it's kind of a loaded question, isn't it? I mean, if it stinks, it stinks. Smells bad for everybody. Smell bad for you? Yeah. I mean, what do you want me to do, make excuses for him?
We had a chance to win. We didn't get it done. We'll go back to work tomorrow, and we'll go to fixing it. And that's what we're going to do. A lot of football season left. Whole heck of a lot of football season left. And I tell you what, I saw a bunch of fighters in that locker room. A bunch of friggin' fighters on the sideline. And that's a football team that's going to continue to improve and get better. They're going to fight to improve and get better. I don't know how many games we're going to win, but I know we're going to fight.
Quarterbacks are like dogs. I mean, if you throw them a treat, then they respond. You know, they get smiles on their face, their tails wag, and and then pretty soon they'll be a little more affectionate towards you as far as throwing the ball your direction. You see, and
we played some pretty good teams and beat some pretty good teams. So we're headed that direction. We got a long way to go, but tonight sure was nice.
Oh, welcome in to the latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. I go by SEC Mike on Twitter. And I'm joined as always by my cousin Shane, who goes by Big Orange Vols on Twitter. What are you up to, you big Tennessee homer?
Hey, babe, what's going on?
Oh, man, I'm just trying to make it through the dead period here on the SEC calendar. And I think I come up with a fun way, little discussion, kind of like our last episode where we were talking some of our favorite all-time SEC quarterbacks. We're going to go in a little bit of a different direction on this show. But how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, you kind of dropped a bomb on me there the last show, Mike. I mean, Mike, here's how I'm not prepared at all, as everybody knows that's ever listened to this show. Ill-prepared shame. But Mike calls me up, says, "Hey man, I got a great idea. I'm gonna run it by you. I'm not gonna say anything. We'll just talk about it." And so I thought it'd be like some simple questions, not who is the best SEC quarterback, stuff like that. I need a little warning, Mike, because as I'm going through the list, it's not like I had a long list here, and I was thinking of names after we got off the show, and I'm looking at all the hate mail we're getting on Twitter and stuff like that. And, so Mike's like, "Hey, I got an idea. I've been kicking around for 3 or 4 days, but I'm going to give you 10 seconds to tell me who you think the best quarterback come to the SEC is." So, but no, I mess with you, Mike. I didn't think we were too far off. There was a lot of great quarterbacks that we didn't mention. There was a lot of great quarterbacks that we did mention. But it was good seeing the fan interaction. And the thing was, there's no wrong answer because, like I said, a quarterback like Heath Schuler may not have meant anything to 13 other fans, but for me personally, it was one of the first games I ever saw, so it stuck with me. So that was just kind of a fun topic, but I had to turn my notifications off, Mike. I was like, damn it, Mike got me wrapped up in another list.
Yeah, and one guy, I even forgot to mention him, Shane, but the perfect candidate for what we were trying to discuss. And, how these players do in the NFL, I think it kind of can taint their legacy or how good they were in college football. But one guy that was just a freak of nature that still to this day, I think he's the most gifted player I've ever seen live in person. And that is former LSU quarterback Jamarcus Russell, who, went on to become number 1 overall pick in the NFL. And it failed spectacularly in the NFL. And I think that's the lasting legacy he had. But if you just look at what he did in college, I mean, the guy could throw the football 70, 80 yards and it like effortlessly. And I was there at the game. They were playing Tennessee. It was a matchup of 2 top 10 teams. And, we're talking future NFL players all across the field. And he was night and day on another level of anybody on that team throwing the ball. He was like a damn tank back there when he took off and ran the ball. I don't know that I've ever seen anyone as physically gifted as Jamarcus Russell. And it's just too bad that, things went the way they did in the NFL, because if he was focused and dedicated, I think he could have been an all-timer at the NFL level too.
Now, what game was this? Which Tennessee game?
I'm trying to think the year. This was probably like 2014, 2013. It was LSU at Tennessee. And Tennessee, this was the famous game that I believe Eric Ainge was the quarterback, but he was out. And they had to go with Jonathan Crompton, who came in with a lot of hype, but never started a game. And he had a hell of a game, too. It was a back-and-forth game. College game day was on campus, if I'm not mistaken. So this was a marquee matchup, and LSU and Jamarcus Russell left Neyland Stadium with a win. And, man, if you would have told me he was the number 1 overall pick that day, I would have believed you, and I would have thought that he would go on to a decade awesome career in the NFL based on what I saw that day.
Yeah, well, Mike, the year was 2006.
Way off.
I know exactly when it was. Yeah. Jamarcus, he's been out a little while, Mike. No, it was it was 2006. I get it mixed up because I think that was the year, if I'm not mistaken, Mike. 2005, I want to say we went down there. That's when we were down. We came back, one of the greatest games I ever seen, only to get destroyed the next year when they came back up and of course smoked us. So, no, I am not a huge fan of Jamarcus Russell.
Last episode, Shane, we tackled some of our favorite SEC quarterbacks all time. And now, I'm going to go in a little bit different direction. Not necessarily a historic question looking backward. This is going to be more about moving forward. And I'm going to pose it to you first. I told this guy that we'd give him a shout out on the podcast. But of course, one of our favorites, Brett Cianca, Pick Six Previews. He does an outstanding job covering not only the SEC, but all of college football. And he has recently shared, Shane, I wanted to share this with you, his new coach impact grades. And I reached out to Brett to kind of, give me a little explanation on how he does this. And he's got a unique system called a game grader that he grades every team, every game. And what he does is he compares one season from the next. So he's going essentially Jeremy Pruitt's year to Josh Heupel's year and grading out Tennessee. Does that make sense?
I love this because you want to talk about two total opposite ends of the spectrum here. You know what I'm saying? I just got one of these MacBook Pros, and I'm trying to figure out how to copy and paste. And he's up here like the Matrix figuring out which coach is going to hit. So I love that, man. What does he got?
So the most improved team, biggest coach impact in the country last year, Shane. I mean, I'd ask you to guess, but I already gave it away. Josh Heupel at Tennessee, plus 19.3, according to Pick Six Previews. That's how big of an impact Josh Heupel made for Tennessee last season. But, not to be outdone here, the number 3 biggest impact in the country, Shane Beamer at South Carolina, plus 9.8. So South Carolina, Tennessee, both those coaches shared first year coach of the Steve Spurrier first coach of the year award. They both split it, and for good reason, based on these metrics. And here's one other one that I really wanted to share with you, Shane, because this again comes from Pick Six Previews. Kentucky has 2 10-win seasons in the last 4 seasons. That's the same amount as Tennessee and Texas A&M combined since 2005. So nearly 20 years we're talking. So Kentucky's historically good right now. We all know that under Mark Stoops and what they're building. So, hey, there's no better time to have conversations like this in the offseason. So I want to throw it to you, and we'll just spitball here for a minute. But who do you think's got the brighter future? Kentucky under Mark Stoops, Tennessee under Josh Heupel, or South Carolina under Shane Beamer? And I'm not necessarily asking you, who's going to be better this season. This is more of a just, maybe if one of these teams go win the SEC, maybe, hopefully, fans can pray the national championship or a college football playoff. Which of these three programs, this is a very difficult thing for you to take your unbiased hat off here. But, Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky, I cannot, it's been a while since all three of these programs had the arrow pointed up here, and they're going to be battling it for years to come. So, which one do you think's got the brighter future there with their current head coaches, Kentucky, Tennessee, or South Carolina?
Mike, like you said, unbiased. That's tough because obviously, with my big orange glasses, I want to pick Tennessee, and not to mention South Carolina with the momentum with the transfer portal and things like that, and the recruiting classes. I think both of those guys are coming up, but you're talking about first. I mean, how do you argue with 10-win season Kentucky because the schedule is what gets you to an SEC championship? And I know as a Tennessee fan, buddy, I see it on the message boards. Everybody giving Kentucky a hard time with their scheduling, but who cares? You know what I'm saying? If you can get 10 wins, look how close you are to 12. So I think right now at this given moment, if you're asking me if I put money on it, I'm going Kentucky. And not just scheduling, because I think they're almost there, brother. You know what I'm saying? I think a lot of these like when you see Tennessee and you see the Gamecocks, I think they're a couple recruiting classes away from seriously competing in the East because of competitive depth. Kentucky's there. And and if all they need is, and you saw it with what's his name, all it takes is a couple of good recruits in the transfer portal, and you're just highlighting some of the pieces, some of your weaknesses. That's where Kentucky's at right now. And if they get the right chemistry, that's my favorite one right now, especially out of the East.
Now, how about looking at it from a different angle, though, Shane? Because, let's hope this doesn't happen. But, there's people speculating the offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, came in here, and he just completely changed, how they play offensive football at Kentucky in his first year there. He did a hell of a job. And, of course, he came from the L.A. Rams. He was an assistant coach. And now they just won the Super Bowl. And their offensive coordinator is going on. I think he's the Vikings' new head coach, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, there's an opening there. Went to L.A. Rams, new offensive coordinator. And some people have speculated Liam Cohen could be jumping back to the NFL. I've heard that, that's one of the few things he would leave Kentucky for is a offensive coordinator position in the NFL. Would that change things for you? If Kentucky all of a sudden here has got a new offensive coordinator that, I don't want to compare it to Joe Brady because I think as we've gotten further away from LSU's national championship, I think it's clear as day. It was Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Jefferson and Derek Stingley. I mean, all these outstanding players. So they had more to do with it than a damn coach. But, could you see Kentucky taking a big hit there if they don't have their offense coordinator next year?
Well, obviously, Mike, when you lose a coordinator, it's a hit regardless. But the thing about Kentucky, and I'm not – obviously there was going to be improvement on that side of the ball. I mean, you got to think, a year removed from what practically running Wildcat every down. You know what I'm saying? So You bring anybody in there, it's going to make that offense look like a two-dimensional monster. So Kentucky was still missing some pieces, but I think if you could keep your coordinator, obviously that's going to help. We've seen it in years past, but we've also seen, many teams plug and play, like, for instance, Alabama. You know what I'm saying? How many coordinators they go through? They still produce. Now, I'm not saying it's the same talent gap, but if you can kind of pick a coordinator that runs the same style or scheme, then you've got more ingredients to use next year. So I'm not panicking by no means, and it's a good thing to have. You want your coaches to be poached. You want your coaches. I mean, think about me as a Tennessee fan, that old Oklahoma thing. I was happy. I mean, obviously I didn't want to lose my coach, but I was happy that there's other programs considering my coach to their team. So I think that's a good spot for Kentucky, and it opens up the door for future coordinators if needed.
Mm-hmm. Now, something we were talking about off air before we got on the line here. South Carolina, I've been going back and studying Spencer Rattler during his time at Oklahoma. And let me just say, Shane, I'm not all the way done yet watching all his games, but I've watched about half of them. And he's the real deal. I mean, we're talking 70% completion percentage. He's got a big arm. He's a lot more mobile than I thought that he was. I thought he was more of just a pocket passer. He can take off and hurt you with his legs as well. You know, all of a sudden, I think, you know, you saw the articles. Some people wrote them. South Carolina, can they win the East here in year 2? I still think that's probably, you know, being a little too optimistic, but if Spencer Rattler that I'm seeing based on his Oklahoma performances, if he shows up and South Carolina's defense continues to progress and they have some receivers step up, I mean, they looked pretty damn good in that bowl game against a North Carolina team that you and I both thought, you know, that they didn't really – we thought they stood a chance, but we both picked North Carolina to win it. They beat the hell out of them. So – I don't know. I'm trying to spin it towards South Carolina. I mean, it wouldn't stun me if Shane Beamer and them, you know, they're having so much success in the transfer portal. If all of a sudden they're looking like a new beast in the East, wouldn't you think?
Well, just crown them, Mike. Just go ahead and crown them. You know, this league is so fragile, brother. All it takes is a couple good recruiting classes. All it takes is a bad coach, and all it takes is a good quarterback. You know what I'm saying? And if you get one of those or all of those, you know, your future can just change like that. So I think getting an experienced quarterback, and I know he's not got a ton of tread on the tires, but this is a kid that's been recruited since he was young in high school. You know what I'm saying? This is a kid that is used to the national spotlight. Things didn't work out in Oklahoma, but in South Carolina, I mean, I think it's gonna be a different animal. I think it's gonna be, hey, let's change this offense and move it around this man. So I don't know. If I'm a South Carolina fan, I'm on freaking cloud 9 right now because, like I said, a good quarterback can change things. A good quarterback can take a bad team. I mean, look at Joe Burrow, man. I'm just saying, LSU struggling with quarterback situation for many, many years. You get one good quarterback. We're talking about the greatest offensive season and number 1 draft pick. So that I'm not comparing the two, but again, good quarterbacks are hard to come by, especially in this league. And I truly believe South Carolina got one.
Mm-hmm. Now, last team here, of course, Tennessee. I know you're trying to play down your homerism, but I mean, my goodness.
Best for last. I got you.
All these stats that say Josh Heupel making a huge impact for the Vols. You got one of the premier quarterback developers in the country, and we all know what an important position that is in today's college football. I mean, you simply cannot go very far without elite quarterback play unless you got the best damn defense of all time, on your side or something like that, or you got Derrick Henry in the backfield, and we know he's such a unicorn out there. There's just not probably going to be another one like him anytime soon. So, I look at what Tennessee's building. Hendon Hooker at this point in time was, a guy you're certainly glad you got via the transfer portal, but I don't think anyone was ready to crown this guy, as you'd say. But here, just a season working with Josh Heupel. He's one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the country. 4 of 5 on the offensive line return. Your running backs are returning. Your star receivers, all your tight ends, and of course Hendon Hooker going into year 2 under Josh Heupel. You just signed an All-American in Taven Jackson. The number 3 quarterback in the country is got Tennessee on his radar. The number 1 receiver is apparently leaning towards Tennessee. I mean, I'm reading articles. There's $25 million being raised to help Tennessee's NIL. The future looks bright as hell under Josh Heupel at Tennessee. And let's not discount the job Tim Banks did at defensive coordinator, who, I got to be honest with you, Shane, I had no idea who in the hell the guy was when he got hired at Tennessee. Yet I know that defense wasn't stellar, but they were a hell of a lot better than I anticipated they would be in year 1. And that was a defense lacking many elite players and virtually no depth. So the depth is already being built upon, and they still need some elite playmakers to emerge there. But if they can just get an above-average defense to go with this offense.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking a true SEC contender here, so I certainly could spin it in Tennessee's favor, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I always think year 2 is like that tell me year. I know everybody circles year 3, year 4 with these coaches and their recruiting classes, but everybody can have a good year or play a bunch of teams that were having bad games. You know what I'm saying? It seems like year 2 is when you find out really what you got. And I like Heupel. I love Heupel. What am I talking about? I am in love with that man. And because we went from going to games like Georgia, going to games like Alabama, knowing that we didn't have a snowball chance in hell, and both of those at half, you're like, well, maybe, it's just that's the team you want. You want a team that can compete with anybody, and the fact that they were able to do it with what they had in the roster, I like you said, even toward the tail end of the season, man. I mean, you talked about banged up and thinned out. That defense, Coach Banks, like you said, that man should have got. I mean, I don't know how much they're paying him, but he needs more because of what he was able to get from that unit. So I like it. And that's one thing. I love the coaching staff. I love the players. I love the buy-in. I love some of these kids coming back, Hooker especially, It's there's some things working at Tennessee, man. I mean, it seems like, I look at programs like Arkansas and Tennessee and these schools in South Carolina. Man, they're getting this NIL stuff lined up, brother, because they're sleeping giants and they want to compete again. So I like the trajectory of this program, and it starts with Heupel, and we are truly blessed to have him up here.
Mm-hmm. Now, I agree 100% with you, Shane, when you say Kentucky. I don't know if I would say I agree 100% with the brightest future, because I think Kentucky could legitimately challenge for the SEC East next season, but I'm going to lean towards Tennessee here.
Let me ask you.
Uh-huh.
When you say brightest future, you know what I'm saying? It's like I take it as who's going to win first. You know what I'm saying? And because that's what you want. That's the ultimate goal. And I just think Kentucky right now is closer to that goal. They're closer to the finish line. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
But I do think it's like those – you ever watch those track events, and they got the 4 legs, and on that fourth one, it feels like those guys are starting to catch up to them. They're definitely a lot faster. That's what this feels like. And these guys, all 3 of these teams right now, I can't tell you how it's going to finish right now in the SEC.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that's what makes it so exciting, particularly in the East, because it's looking like a complete toss-up, and that's not to dismiss the Florida Gators, but that is the only other question I got for you, Shane, on this episode. Who do you think will be the most successful hire? Billy Napier at Florida, Brian Kelly at LSU? I mean, there's really no wrong answer here, because both of these coaches, impressive resumes. Hell, Brian Kelly, he's legitimately the winningest coach in college football right now. If you count his record at, I believe it was Grand Valley, he was incredible there. Notre Dame led them to multiple playoff appearances, a BCS title game, and then Billy Napier, he was at Louisiana for 4 years, 3 times took him to the conference title game, won it once, and he has just basically burned everything down to the ground there in Gainesville that Dan Bullitt did, and he's hired a completely new staff and new behind the scenes. He's hired about 100 people down there to basically build Florida in Georgia and Alabama's image, and putting the resources and the network behind that program to reach its excellence, because I certainly think Florida, if it commits like these other schools, there's no reason it can't be the next Georgia. There's no reason it can't be the next Alabama. But that's a hell of a lot easier said than done. But I think they're on the right track. But then again, LSU, hell, it don't matter who the coach is. They're winning national championships. 3 of the last coaches have won a national championship. They've never hired someone with a better resume than Brian Kelly. So, loaded question to be sure. But, if you had to pick one, Billy Napier, Brian Kelly, who do you think is going to have the most successful tenure? And again, that's not necessarily saying next season, but maybe, 4, 5, 6 years down the road, which program do you think is going to be at a higher stature in the SEC?
That is tough, and it's tough because you can win championships at either location. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you talk about you're playing NCAA and you're picking a school to win. It's like, well, obviously you want to go to Gainesville, or obviously you want to go to LSU. It reminds me a lot of my brother. It's like he's been skinny his whole life. This other teams, we got to work our ass off to keep that weight down, but they just show up skinny all the time, eat whatever they want. That's Gainesville and that's LSU. So I like short term. I guess I'm going to get out of this. I like short term Kelly, long term Napier, because, like you said, just what he's doing down there, he's just flipping it upside down, brother.
Yeah.
What Florida's been doing the last 10 years has not worked. So get it out of here. You know what I'm saying? Just start fresh, make Florida fun. They're in a recruiting hotbed, and they'll have no problems getting kids on that campus. So I love long-term Florida Gators, but right now, established coach with Kelly. I mean, he is a big name. He is coming to your living room. I mean, he may hug your kid and dance with him a little bit, but I think I'm going to go with Kelly short term, because I think this team's closer to winning championships than Florida is right now, but not by much, Mike. And both of these, I still think they were excellent hires for their programs, and expect both of them to compete immediately. Like we said, we just talked about Kentucky, Tennessee, and South Carolina. I'm telling you right now, it'd be tough for me to put any of those teams over Florida Gators right now if we're talking about the East. You know what I'm saying? And then the LSU on their side, I mean, that's a program that every other year seems like they're competing for an SEC championship just because of talent that seems to be on that roster all the time.
Right. And, I certainly get where you're saying that, because I think if you're Brian Kelly, or if you're an LSU fan, you love the hire of Brian Kelly for many reasons, but I think the most important one, Shane, is, this guy was comfortable as could be at Notre Dame, and he could probably coach there as long as he wanted, made a ton of money, won a lot of ball games, but I think in the back of his mind, he truly knew, I'm not going to win a national championship at Notre Dame. And it says to me at his age, not that he's too old or anything, but, he's probably got 10 years or less in him. Although I think he signed a 10-year deal. That may be in like my final 10 years. He's going to chase that national championship with everything he's got. And he's coming to a school that he knows can get it done, that knows they can get the athletes there to play. Because every time he faces the SEC team, he loses. And, I don't care how good of a coach you are. You need the players that Nick Saban and Kirby Smart and all these guys got, and that's why he's coming down here. So I think you love that hire, but I'm going to agree with you long term. I think Billy Napier is the answer, and maybe in part because he is in the SEC East, Shane, where, right now, even though there are a lot of teams on the rise, we just profiled several of them, it's still a much easier path, even though you got that beast of the East in Georgia. I mean, the West is just, it's just a damn gauntlet over there where there is no gimme game. And anytime you may even say, Auburn, maybe next year's a gimme, but hell, because they finished at the bottom of the division, they're ready to fire their coach. So who knows? I mean, they may have Urban Meyer at this time next year. You know what I mean? Like, they will not accept mediocre in that division from anyone. They had Joe Moorhead there, won 2 Egg Bowls, took his team to 2 bowl games. Get his ass out of here. Get us Mike Leach, the Pirate. I mean, even Mississippi State is not going to accept mediocre football. So, that's just the state of things in the West. So I think the climb will be a little bit easier for Billy Napier. And, that's certainly – I think you're playing it smart there, Shane, because I don't know how good Florida's going to be next year. They could be really good, but it's probably going to take a little bit of time, and the schedule right out the gate's incredible for the Gators. So, I would not be surprised if we're reading headlines in September or October, is Billy Napier really the guy? And then by November, he's got that thing on a roll, because it's going to take time to implement going from Dan Mullen to Billy Napier's. It all sounds good in the summer, but if a loss or two mounts, that's when your character is really tested. So we'll see what Billy Napier is bringing to it. But yeah, I like the future of the Florida Gators. And, it's funny that I say the East and the West, because even we got Greg Sankey out here saying, Shane, that, the SEC is potentially looking at getting rid of division. So we may have to rework this thing if they blow that up. But, by all accounts, when Texas and Oklahoma come in, which is looking like not this offseason but the next, there's a really good chance the SEC no longer has an East and West division, which I think is going to be the right move, and it's something that they're going to have to do when they go to 16 teams.
Absolutely. Boy, that's going to be wild, brother. That may be a 3-hour pod when we do that one. Because there's already speculation on what it's going to look like, and, people keep bouncing around. But I think it's going to be time with 16, because, it would be nice to see these schools play each other more often, and you just can't do that with the East-West. But it's hard. Nobody likes change, because for 20, 30 years you're used to watching, a certain game. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but that's all hearsay. We'll get to that when that happens. But I'm with you, brother. I don't know. I like to see these lower programs on the rise. I know one of them's my Vols, but teams like South Carolina, teams like Florida, they're no fun when they suck. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You go to the West. It's no fun when you look at the West and the top 6, 7 teams are in the top 25. And then you look over the East and there's 2 of us. Right. So I like it when there is more programs, and it's going to happen, brother. There's going to be 4 lost teams in the top 25, because when these juggernauts start playing each other, they're the best. We're always going to be crowning a national champ. So, I love it. I'm here for it, and I love we're talking about Kelly and Napier. I mean, we're talking about which one's going to do great. They're both going to do great. So I'm looking forward to this season. I'm looking forward to. Let me ask you this on the front. Wasn't there an event or something the coaches get together at some point? Not in the summertime, but I thought there was one that. They kind of ask a couple questions coming up.
Yeah, well, they just did that in Birmingham last week, but
okay.
That's a closed door meeting, so they don't reveal what they're talking about. But yeah, it's things like,
it seems like stuff starts to leak out right after that meeting, though, right? So we may have some news here in the next week or two.
Well, I think that's why old Sankey got in front of it and started talking about getting away with divisions, because that was surely discussed, rule changes and all these players falling down after big plays on defense. I mean, I'm sure that was discussed. And how much beer are they allowed to sell at Neyland now that fans are throwing stuff on the field? That's probably discussed.
They got a certain section I got to go buy it now? I guess I'm going back to sneaking it in, huh?
I kid. But, so that's not the big one. The big one is obviously SEC Media Days coming up in July. But and then they also have they have league meetings. That's when it will really get going here in Destin. And that's the one leading up to Media Days, where they do – I think what they do here is at the league meetings, they discuss things, and then they come back in Destin and they vote on them. So, that's the big one, and that'll be later in the summer.
Somebody get a microphone near Pirate right now. He's ready to spill the beans. I can feel it.
But yeah, hey, this is the perfect time. Maybe if fans got questions, maybe hit us up on Twitter. What I need to do is reopen that voicemail. Just couldn't get to it during the season. Have people call into the show about any
that'd be cool.
Any voicemail questions you guys got for us. We'll boot that back up. But beyond that, it's the dead time of the off season, brother. So that's all I got. You got anything before we hop off the line?
Yeah, Mike turned that thing off when I started prank calling it. Oh, no, brother, I ain't got anything. Like I said, it's the off season, but it's talking season. But this is also sometimes my favorite part of the season because we're all undefeated. We all got that kid coming on campus we can't wait to see. We got a new coach that we think is going to change the trajectory of our program, So it's the best time of the year. And I do think there are going to be some pretty big changes here in the offseason. So this is the best spot to find it, guys. That SEC podcast. Just get it out there. If you got some buddies that are looking for something to listen to in the offseason, send them our way. We do send out a tweet every day when the podcast comes out. A simple retweet would help us out. You never know, somebody in your thread may decide they want to check out that SEC podcast. But we're going to do some reviews. I don't know when we got that planned, but if you got you an Apple product or an iPhone or tablet or anything like that, just steal somebody's and write a little review in there. Screenshot it, send it to that SEC podcast at gmail.com, and Mike will take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't have an Apple product, now you can rate us on Spotify. So get us that review on Spotify too and send that to us. You do that, we'll send you a beer koozie free of charge just for doing that. We got all 14 SEC teams represented with 14 different koozies. So that's just our little way of saying thanks. But hey, that's going to do it, brother, for this episode of the show. I appreciate you as always joining me. I appreciate each and every one of you for checking us out. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right. See you guys. Go Vols.